Hi there. Today's lesson is about the percent equation. Now, a lot of books teach it a couple ways. I'm going to show you what the book shows here from an old textbook, and also kind of the way I would show my kids as well. It says to solve any percent problem, you can use the percent equation. Now, the percent equation is part equals percent times a whole. So that's the percent equation of how they would kind of express that in words. What part of something equals the percent of a whole, all right? And then how you write that out. So the percent is essentially written as a decimal when you do this here. This becomes a decimal for when it's given. Let me show you a couple ways that I like to look at this one here. The book, first of all, actually, I'll do the book way. The book shows, example here, 600 is what percent of 750? It says 600 is the part, so that's the part there, and 750 is the whole. So it's kind of you say, okay, you have 750 and you want to know what part of the 750, 600, what's that percentage going to be? And in this case here, what we don't know is the percent, which is the variable in this case here. We're just going to call that in. So what they do is they go, well, 600 is the part, and then the percent we don't know, that's the in, and the whole is 750. So that's where these numbers come from. When I worked this out with my students before, what I would often do is say this. Let's say 600 is a number, and we're turning into an equation. So what I would do with my students is I'd say, well, let's turn this into something we understand a little better. Let's zoom in here. So 600 becomes a number. Well, that's easy enough. The word is going to be equal. What percent we don't know, so that's still an in. Of is always multiply, so you can do a dot for multiplication or an X, whatever one helps you out, just remember it's not a decimal, and then 750. So when I would convert this sentence into a math equation, we would essentially exchange some of the words like is and of for equals and multiplication. From here then, I would then solve for n. To do that, I would separate the n and the 750. They're joined by multiplication, so I would divide both sides by 750. And now I'm back to where the book was, which was having 600 divided by 750, which equals, in this case here, 0.8 n. Equals 0.8 n. Now the tricky part here for most students is they go, okay, I'm done. But we're not done. Remember, we're looking for the percent. This is a decimal, not an actual percent. So to convert that into a percent, now I need to go to the right 2 hops. Okay, so I go 8 like this, and I'm going to go 1, 2 to move my decimal there, which means I need to add a 0 in that gap right there. So this becomes 80% is what 600 is the part. 600 is 80% of 750. Okay, so a couple of little funny steps here, right? You're going to solve it and you end up with a decimal, which is great, but we have to make sure we turn that 0.8 into a percent by moving the decimal place over 2 and turning that into a percent, right? This is 8/10. If you think about it, this is 8 out of 10. That's what that number is, 8/10. To be a percent, it needs to be out of 100. So essentially, we're saying let's put a 0 and a 0, which is 80 out of 100, or otherwise known as 80%. So this is where it's helpful to be able to go back and forth between decimals and fractions and percents and see how they're all interrelated like so. Okay, let's look at another problem here. We can say this example says 45 is 90% of a number. And again, the example here shows you how to say 45 is the part and 90% is the percent. And then in this case, we don't know what the whole, what number, we don't know the whole, so we have to look for the whole number here. So as they write that down, we have 45 is equal to 90%, and again we can write that as a fraction or a decimal, but in this case, since it's an equation, we'll write it as a decimal. Okay, we're going to hop 2 spaces to the left to go from percent to decimal. Of what number, we don't know. We can call that, they call it W, that's fine, it doesn't matter. Now at that point there, we're going to divide both sides by 0.90, or even just 0.9. You don't have to worry about the 0 if you choose not to. And once you divide that out, you find that 45 divided by 0.9 is equal to 50, and that's the number. Now, because we're looking for an actual number and not a percent, we would leave it there as 50. Okay? There's nothing to change. It's not a decimal percent. It just simply is 50. Let's do some examples here down below just to get a few more kind of under your belt before you start with your homework. All right. So the first one, what percent of 56 is 14? Again, we're going to turn these into an equation. So I have what percent, we'll call that P, because that's our question, what percent, we don't know, of is multiply 56 is equal to, and 14. So we're looking here, we're saying, okay, this is P times 56 equals 14, and that's my equation. Now what I want to do is solve for P. To solve for P, I'm going to divide both sides, in this case by 56, in order to get the P by itself. So that reduces down, leaves me with just the P on the left side. So P is equal to 14 divided by 56. So I have to do some math, and again, a calculator can come in handy here a little bit for you if you wanted to kind of see what that's going to be. 56 is going to go in there, well, probably put my satellite dish up top, my decimal point there. In this case here, we have 56 goes into 1 0 times, 14 0 times, 140, probably just 2 times. So we go 2, 12, 10, 11. I'm going to subtract. 10 minus 2 is 8, 3 minus 1 is 2, bring down to 0. How many times does it go into 280? Hard to say. I'm going to go with at least probably 5 times there. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 3 is 28. So that's nice, 0, so we have 0.25. But again, we're looking for a what? A percent. So I can't leave 0.25 as my answer, because that's a decimal. 0.25 is great, but because I want it to be a percent, I need to move it over 2 to the right, and then write it as 25%, like so. Again, this is also 25 hundredths if you were to write that decimal as a fraction, and that's what a percent is. Let's look at number 3 right here. Let's write the equation. It says 36 is this going to be equal what percent, so we can write P, looking for percent again, of times this, of is times 40. So to solve this one, I'm going to divide both sides by 40, both sides by 40. So I look at 36 divided by 40, 36 divided by 40, decimal point on top right away. And 40 goes into 36 0 times, it goes into there 9 times. 9 times 0 is 0, 9 times 4 is 36. We subtract and we have 0. So we're sitting at 0.9 as an answer. So we have 0.9 equals our percent. But again, it's a percent. So I have to move the decimal over 2 spaces. So just be careful on this one. Look at this real quick. We're going to get 0.9. And when I move the decimal over 2 spaces, it's going to go 1, 2 to right there, meaning I got to fill in that gap with a 90, so my answer becomes 90%. Okay? So just be careful as you're moving things around. So to go from decimal to percent, we're going to go to the left. To go decimal to percent, sorry, we're going to go to the right, and go percent to decimal, go to the left. Whew. Caught myself. Let's look at the next one. 65% of what number is 678? So 65%, they already gave us a percent, so we'll write that as a decimal, move it to the left 2 spaces, 0.65 of, multiply, what number, we don't know, we'll call it n, is equal to 78. So there's our equation. Now we solve for n. Divide both sides by 0.65, 0.65, so 78.65. Now again, I could check my work with the calculator, I know. I'm going to hop over 2 spaces here, 1, 2, so I'm going to go 1, 2 as well. Move my decimal there and move it up right away. Put some space holders right there as well. 65 is going to go into 78 one time. So 65 there. 8 minus 5 is 3, and we have a 1. Bring down the 0. And 65, I'm going to go with 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So 0. I can't stop there because that means I'm left with 0, so I need to fill in that gap there with 120. So in this case here, we would say that n is equal to 120. And we're going to leave it like that because we are looking for a number. So n is equal to 120. So several steps to get there. Let's look at one more example in terms of the format you're going to see on your homework stuff. So what percent of 2,000 is 8? So what percent? We're looking for percent again of, so times 2,000, that's my number, is and 8. That's my equation, how I'd set that up. So to solve that, we divide both sides by 2,000. 8 divided by 2,000. And again, I'll do long division here. 2,000, add my decimal point there. Satellite dish on top. So 2,000 goes into 8 0 times. It goes into 80 0 times. It goes into 800 0 times. It goes into 8,000 4 times, right? So 0, 0, 0, 8, and nothing left over. So I wanted to show this one because why? That's a little bit funny. So our percent so far, our p-value is equal to 0.004. But I want to turn that into a percentage. So I need to hop over 2 spaces. That means I'm actually going to have p equal to 0.4%. That might look wrong to you because you're thinking, it's a decimal still. Yep, it actually is a decimal still. That's okay. Sometimes your percentage can be a decimal, but I can see I moved over 2 spaces, so I did convert the decimal into a percent properly. It just ends up being a smaller, it's less than 1% is what that means. It's less than 1%. All right, so those are your examples there for today. So again, set up your equation, work that out. You can always check it with a calculator quickly to see how you do. And today's work is going to be to do the skills practice for the algebra, the percent equation, as you can see here. You have to do numbers 1 through 17. I'm going to just kind of run through a few of them in just a few minutes. I'm going to go through numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. They're very much like the samples we just did together, so make sure you press pause, try them on your own, and then come back and check your work. All right, here we go. Let's see how we did. Let's take a look at number 1 first of all. I'm going to zoom in, zoom in. All right, and zoom on back out. All right, so here we go. Looking at the first one. Our first one, we have 25% of 176 is what number? Let's write this as an equation first of all. So let's write it as an equation for each problem. You do need to round sometimes if necessary, but here we go. So 25% as a decimal, move it over 2 spaces. So we have 0.25. Oh, sorry about that. Get you in the frame. 0.25 of becomes multiply. 176 is equal to, and we don't know what number it's going to be. So in this case here, you're going to multiply 0.25 times 176. And just for me, I'm going to use just a calculator because, again, you can as well. But the key thing here is I want to make sure, did you set up your equation right? If you have the equation right, you're on the right track. If you get the answer wrong, then you have to be careful with your computation. Again, you can check it with a calculator, which is just fine, but you want to be able to do it without one as well, right? So the answer is going to be 44 for the number that we're missing there. If I multiply that out longhand, I would get 0.25 times 176, and again, that's 30. 35 plus 3 is 38, and 5 plus 3 is 8. Put a 0 there. We get 12, 14, 15. Carry the 1, 2, and 3. right? 0, 10 carry the 1, 14 carry the 1, 4, 2 behind the decimal, 2 behind the decimal, and I'm at 44. 44.000 or just 44. Okay, so make sure you can do that. That's back to elementary school, honestly. Okay, number 3. 24, that's a number, is, means multiply, oh, sorry, is, 24 is the equal sign. Ooh, careful. What percent, I'm going to make it P, so remember to convert it into a percent, of is times, and 30. So that's my equation. So make sure your equation was set up. That's key there. So 24 equals P times 30. So to solve this one here, that becomes 24 equals P times 30. Divide both sides by 30 to end up with P. So 24 divided by 30 in our case here is going to be equal to 0.80 equals P. Because it's percent, what do I want to do? Move it to the right 2 spaces. So I end up with 80% as my solution for number 3. Number 5. What is, so what, we don't know, so we can call it W, is equals 60%, 0.60 of, multiply 45. So my equation is pretty straightforward. I'm going to multiply 45 times 0.6. So 0.60 times 45 is going to be equal to 27. So what is 60% of 45? 27. So 27 is 60% of 45. Okay? So that means part of it. That's the part. That's the whole. If you're thinking about the part, whole equation again, that's what that is. Number 7. What percent, so this is, again, I don't know the percent, looking for the P, of multiply 125 is 25. There's my equation. So to solve this here, you got to move the 125 over there, divide both sides by 125. So P is going to be equal to 25 divided by 125. Now 25 divided by 125 is equal to 0.2 or 0.20, however you want to look at it. I can put it as 0.2. Now, because the percent, I want to move it over 2 spaces, right? So move the decimal there, add the 0 there, so it becomes what? It becomes 20%. All right, number 9. 2% of what number is 5? So 2%. This is a great one because why? To turn the percent into a decimal, I need to move 2 spaces to the left. So this becomes 0.02 of, let's multiply, a number I don't know, is 5. So this is the place where most mistakes are made, right there. Turning 2% into the right kind of decimal. Make sure it's 0.02. From here then, I would divide both sides by 0.02, 0.02, and if I did it longhand, that'd be 5 divided by 0.02, and again, without a calculator, this is the next place where kids often make mistakes. When I set it up, it looks like this. So I'm going to move this over 2 hops, so this becomes moved over 2 hops there, satellite dish on top right away, put a couple zeros here to fill the spaces, 2 goes into 5 2 times, 1, bring the 0 down, 2 goes into 10 5 times, 0, and because I have another 0 down here, it doesn't do anything, the 0 to fill the space, and I can see I have 250 is my answer. So N is equal to 250. Again, one you could double check with a calculator. Alright, so if I do a calculator, I can do 5 divided by 0.02, and I get 250. So it may seem a little weird, but again, good one's to double check and make sure you're doing the computation right. Last one here to kind of look at today that I'm going to do, but you have other ones that you did on your own. So 16 is what percent? So it would be P of this times 4,000. So make sure you set it up the right way. We'll divide both sides by 4,000. in order to get the p by itself. So here's 16 divided by 4,000. So I need to add some zeros there, aren't I, right? Put a decimal point up right away. 4,000 goes into 1 0 times, 16 0 times, 160 0 times. I know 4 goes into 16 4 times, so that means when I get to a little bit bigger number, I'll be okay. 4,000 is in 1,600, not at all. And then 16,000 4 times, so we end up with 16,000 right there. And you can see my answer is 0.004. But that's going to be the percent is equal to 0.004. I need to convert that decimal then into a percent. So we'll hop 2 spaces to the right. And again, we're left with 0.4% is my solution. It might seem funny because, again, it's a decimal like our example problem earlier, but that does make sense. So 0.4% is your answer, number 11. Hope that helps you out, and we'll see you next time.